Yeah. His name's Eddie Zelko. He's doing 30 years for first-degree murder. Took a girl to a national park and shot her 7 times in the back and head. He was a legit person when I knew him. But after 3 or 4 years of heavy meth use, he started to be less and less himself. Next thing you know, he's only hanging with seriously fucked up people and was convinced this girl was a problem, and he and 2 others took it upon themselves to get rid of her. This was 4 years ago. He wasn't a really close friend of mine, but I knew him for years. There's nothing really to feel about it, just odd knowing someone you thought could never do something like that blew a girl's head off.
I never formally met the guy, but he went to school with me and I saw him around. He murdered his father. Unfortunately, I don't think the incident got fair coverage. His father was a wealthy guy who worked some important position and had some important connections. He was well respected in the community. However, from what I have heard from people who personally knew the family, the father frequently abused him and the mother. The news just said something like, they were having an argument and the son lost it and killed his father. Plenty of people believe that the father was abusing his son, and the son snapped and murdered the father in defense.
Yes, we were childhood friends. He was my best friend's brother. I like pretty much everybody, which remains true as an adult, so he was usually included when he was around. He was bullied a lot, though. He had bad acne and very thick, brillo-y hair. He was also really skinny. He took a lot of abuse from both boys and girls. He ended up shooting 2 guys to death during a drug deal gone wrong one night when he was about 21. His mother was always a horrible woman who usually faked illness and had no trouble slapping her kids around. She was the president of the neighborhood watch at the time. Nice job, lady. Just as a side note, she actually called social services on my parents once because they both worked long hours. No joke. She did this with a few neighbors. She was a Georgetown trophy wife. My dad was a neurosurgeon, and my mom was a shark of an attorney, so you can imagine how it turned out for her. Awful, abusive woman.
A first cousin of an HS bud. We used to hang with him all the time. Seriously decent guy, hard worker, could fix anything auto or house. Looked like a younger Brian Dennehy, just a real guy and great to be around. He was married to this absolutely awful woman. One of those what the f did he ever see in her deals, as she was an alcoholic, would berate him in front of friends, yell at anybody in earshot, just a miserable person. Literally saw her reduce him to tears at a holiday party. He's 6'2" and built like a tank. My friend calls me one day asking if I read the paper. This was late 90s. Turns out his cousin was cleaning guns sitting on his couch when she started berating him. According to the court records, he quite calmly shot her once in the upper back while she sat at the computer, then stood up and put one more into her head. He then called 911, explained what he did, and told them he'd be waiting for the police with his hands up. Haven't talked to my friend in a few years, but recall he would be up for parole anytime. It was a real eye-opener that you just never know when somebody's gonna hit that point.
As a teen, he was an insufferable prick who kept trying to barge his way into any friend group he could. Always had a temper and a bone to pick with everyone. Always had to be the center of attention and would lash out when people would ignore him. He was completely unable to discern reality from fiction and would always act like his flavor of the month fiction character. Guy would dress like Dante from Devil May Cry one month, Snake from MGS another, and of course, the Joker from Dark Knight. Always had a penchant for acting edgy and had to be removed from a party for pulling a pocket knife over a dispute in Super Smash Bros. Still in trial for murdering his ex-girlfriend, ex-girlfriend's mother, and attempted murder on the ex-girlfriend's then-current boyfriend. He tried to hide in the woods behind their house when the police caught him. He was hiding in a bush and insisted that he was just going for a walk, despite the bloodied weapons being with him and covered in their blood.
A few. When I was a little kid, my grandparents had a restaurant.
She employed the guy's mom, and he would sometimes help my granny if she needed it. He was a pretty even-tempered guy, in his mid-20s. His mom was also a sweetheart. However, his dad, not so much. One of our local officers went out there to serve a warrant to Dad. Ended up being shot to death. The son ended up claiming responsibility, but most of our small town still believed Dad did it. In high school, I wasn't in class with him, but he was a fairly popular upperclassman. I pretty much saw him daily, never spoke much other than hi. He and an accomplice kidnapped 2 people, robbed them, and then they proceeded to murder them. Worst thing I can remember about my high school years. I still sat in class with his sister for a whole year. A family member, quite a bit younger than me, shot his sibling at 14. He was tried as an adult, served his time. He's always maintained it was an accident. He's a really awesome husband and dad now.
My childhood church had an alternative service for middle school-aged kids on Sunday mornings in another building. If you got there early enough, they would have a table with a bunch of GameCubes and CRTs set up with Super Smash Bros. And free donuts. Needless to say, a lot of the kids loved it and showed up super early just to play Smash Bros. With their church friends. I must have been 12 when this happened. There was this one kid, a couple years younger than me, who would always try to unplug all the consoles in the middle of games, then run before anyone could catch him. At some point, I got fed up with him and chased him down before he could get away. I grabbed him by the arm, but suddenly felt like I was a dog who caught the car. I just asked him, "Why do you always do this?" He looked at me with a wry smile and emotionless eyes and just said, "Fuck you." He yanked his arm from me and ran away. Maybe it's just because I was a pious little kid who hated swearing, but the way he looked at me and said those words always disturbed me. I couldn't stop thinking about him for the next few weeks. I never saw him again after that. I found out a couple years later that he ended up getting in a fight with a kid in his neighborhood and, in a fit of rage, went home and grabbed his dad's gun and shot the kid in cold blood in the middle of the street. He supposedly came from a good family and grew up in a good part of town. I still get an eerie feeling whenever I think about him.
My cousin, my family lives in Denver, but my aunt for some reason married a Pentecostal preacher from the Appalachians. She was thrust into the hillbilly lifestyle, not even knowing that was the husband's intention. The husband constantly physically and mentally abused her, and she had problems before this, where she was committed often. The husband took absolutely no care of my 2 female cousins and my male cousin. The eldest sister got out through scholarships and education. She married a doctor. Immediately, they got my aunt out of the situation, as well as her sister. Her brother, unfortunately, stayed behind. Not a good idea. With no one but his shitty father, he got into hard drugs like meth at a very early age, I think 15. Then opioids, which got too expensive, so he switched to heroin. So one night, he and an addict friend robbed a homeless man who didn't have any money. Then they beat him. Then they set the abandoned house they were in on fire, killing the homeless man. I only met my cousin a couple of times, but he seemed a little off mentally. Still, I was surprised to hear what he did. The good news is that both of the girls and my aunt are in Denver and doing awesome.